Federal loans were a lifeline to Michigan businesses during the pandemic. But not every community benefited equally, which raises some big questions.
Who gets to bounce back after the pandemic, and whose businesses get to stay open or closed? But it's also for really lasting things about who gets to amass generational wealth.
Today, we're going to try to answer some of those questions. This is Stateside. I'm April Baer. The Paycheck Protection Program is into its third phase now. And it is hard to overstate just how much money this loan program is pumping into our economy. Michigan alone saw $16 billion, that's billion with a B, in loans to businesses during the first two phases of PPP lending. Now, for the past couple of weeks, Michigan Radio's Nisa Khan and Tyler Scott have been looking at data with the Reveal reporting network. The folks at Reveal analyzed 5 million of these PPP loans from 5,000 different banks, and they found that there were winners and losers along racial lines. Nisa and Tyler are with us now to talk about what they found in the Detroit metro area. Guys, thanks for joining us. Tyler, as we start out, could you just remind us what the PPP loan program is and what it was designed to do?
If you think back to the very beginning of the pandemic when Michigan and many states across the country were totally shutting down and we were in the absolute throes of reckoning with what the future was going to look like. You may remember the unemployment benefits that were available to people. The government, the federal government, also created the PPP with the intent to keep businesses from having to lay off all their employees. The PPP Paycheck Protection Program is supposed to be a forgivable loan, so businesses who lost revenue because of the pandemic can get a forgivable loan, use that money to pay their workers, and theoretically make up the difference. And businesses can keep their teams together. You can stay on staff, and that's one less hurdle you would have to come up or cross trying to recover from the pandemic, as opposed to businesses who had no other way to make up that lost revenue and may have had to lay people off.
Right. So Reveal did this huge data drag on these loans. Nisa, can you tell us a little bit more about what they found?
Yeah, well, it's important to note that the government did not ask businesses to report their race in the first round, and it was voluntary during the second round. And the vast majority of these businesses did not report their race. So what the people at Reveal did was use demographic data from the census. And what they came up with is using a method to find the estimate number of businesses in each census tract that were eligible for PPP loans. And what their analysis found was that across the top 52 metro areas in the United States, businesses in some majority white census tracts got loans at 1.5 to even twice the rate that businesses in majority Black and Latinx tracts got them.
Wow. So you and Tyler got to take a closer look at these numbers and drill down on the Detroit area. It turns out that was one of the metro areas that Reveal flagged as having pretty big disparities. Nisa, what did you find?
Right, so this is 6 counties. We have Lapeer, Livingston, Macomb, Oakland, St. Clair, and Wayne. And we see big performance gaps across demographics in these counties. Businesses in majority white neighborhoods received loans at around 1.3 times the rate of majority Black communities. And the disparity is even wider for majority Latinx neighborhoods, like Detroit's Mexican Town. Eligible businesses in white areas received loans at a little over twice the rate of businesses in Latinx communities.
I mean, that kind of sounds like those areas received half of what their white counterparts did. And I noticed you said Latinx neighborhoods in Metro Detroit. Are we talking about Southwest? Yes?
Yeah, like Nisa said, that's Mexican Town. That's where, the Hispanic majority census tract neighborhoods are, Southwest Detroit. There's a lot of service side businesses, whether that's restaurants, small clothing shops, sole proprietorships, pizza joints, that kind of thing. And after Nisa did the amazing work she does, crunching the numbers and mapping this all out, I went down there and talked to different people. One of the places I stopped was Taqueria Lupita's, kind of a Detroit institution right in the heart of Mexican Town. Valeria Lopez was working there. She runs the place now. Her parents actually closed down the restaurant when the pandemic hit, and she had it in her heart she didn't want to see it stay closed. So she took the reins over. They signed the paperwork over, and she says she had been hoping to get a PPP loan when she took the business over, but she was ultimately denied.
Yeah, I had that idea. I thought that would definitely come in handy with, especially with the labor shortage and everything. And I mean, I'm just stuck here without help.
How's it going for you?
It's picking up, thankfully. But it was pretty bad during the second shutdown, which no one saw coming. I was pretty close to closing.
Unfortunately, Lopez is not going to qualify for a PPP loan. It's still a requirement that businesses had to be in operation as of February 2020 to qualify. She didn't get into business until later that year, even though her restaurant was already a family business before that. PPP is just not available to her. She kind of slips through the cracks on this one. And that's not the only reason that businesses would have a hard time getting a hold of a PPP loan. For someone who's not a primary English language speaking person, if you're Spanish speaking or anything like that, it's language barriers become an issue. It's also difficult to do without some sort of financial expertise. And business owners, when you're talking small businesses, sole proprietorships, fewer than 100 employees, these people are focused on running their business. When I talked to Valeria, she was in a boot. She has a broken foot. She's pulling double shifts in the kitchen. At one point in the pandemic, she was having to pay her waitstaff out of pocket during the second indoor dining shutdown. So she said she was really close to having to close her business after having it open just a couple of months. Things are looking better now, but she certainly would have had a little bit of easier go of it if she would have been eligible for PPP.
We need to take a quick break. In just a minute, we'll talk about how the PPP loans could reshape local economies. Be right back. Guys, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the consequences of all this. The data seems to speak for itself, and that's a really interesting way of getting at some of the effect of it using the census data for the time period in which we don't have specific race-based data. Were you able to draw any conclusions about whether the PPP program is going to change much about the economy? Nisa, you were all in it in these numbers. What do you think?
Yeah, it's hard to say exactly how it'll play out. But again, this is so much money. This is over $7.6 billion just for Metro Detroit. And some experts are concerned about these lending disparities and what could they mean for neighborhoods and who gets to bounce back after the pandemic and whose businesses get to stay open or closed. But it's also for really lasting things about who gets to amass generational wealth. One person who was really worried about this was Felix Cabo. He's a researcher at the University of Michigan who studies disparities in how these loans have been awarded. Cabo says his findings in our analysis doesn't really surprise him, but he says we can retool these programs to be more equitable.
When all entrepreneurs do well, we all benefit as a nation, right? So it's in our best interest to make sure that our taxpayer dollars are being used to create a level playing field. And clearly, this shows that some of these programs at best are doing nothing to level the playing field, but at worst, they're actually tilting it even further.
And there have been tweaks made to the program since the second round. So when those numbers come out, we should be able to see if they made a difference in the equity picture.
Yeah, can I just add too, it makes a big difference right now for businesses when you compare the people who were able to get PPP loans to those who weren't. In Mexican Town, just a couple of blocks away from Taqueria Lupita's, I talked to Ali Beydoun. He's the owner of Sicily's Pizzeria. He did get a PPP loan, and we've got a little bit of tape. He talked to me about how much of a big deal that was for him.
It was a lifesaver for us. For the first 3 months when the pandemic hit, we were just bleeding so bad until people recovered and started ordering again. And then for that period, we sunk so deep behind in expenses and payroll, and that really came in very handy.
He says it was really hard going when the pandemic hit, and the PPP allowed him to do exactly what it was designed to do. He has a small core team of people who run the place. He was able to keep them together and keep the place in operation even when the bills weren't getting paid by themselves. He, like Valeria, may have had to pay people out of pocket if he hadn't been able to get access to PPP. And there are a lot of barriers, cultural too, that keep people from getting access. I talked to Teresa Zajac. She's the vice president of the Southwest Detroit Business Administration. And for example, early on in the PPP, a lot of Hispanic and Middle Eastern business owners, they don't want to be in debt, and they weren't exactly sure. You say this paycheck protection loan is going to be forgivable, but they didn't exactly trust that.
Is it really going to be something you don't have to pay back? I mean, especially on the first round of PPP, there was a lot of that. Oh, yeah, really? You know, they're going to make me pay it back if I don't do it right. So there was that concern.
Even as changes are being made, there's still an element of communities aren't connected to the financial institutions that might help more of them get these PPP loans.
We'll keep an eye out for the additional data about how this made a difference to business owners in terms of race. But in the meantime, if you're interested in this, you can find out a lot more about how loans from the first two rounds got distributed in Metro Detroit. Just go to michiganradio.org. If you live in the area and you're curious about businesses in your neighborhood, you'll be able to do that. Tyler, Nisa, thank you so much for telling us about this.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Pleasure to do it.
And that's the Stateside Podcast for today. I'm April Baer. You can find the full Stateside show at michiganradio.org. Our executive producer is Laura Weber-Davis. Today's show was produced by April Van Buren. Our theme music's by 14KT with additional music by Blue Dot Sessions. Thanks for being with us today. We'll see you tomorrow.
One way to support the news and information you get from Stateside is by donating a used vehicle to Michigan Radio. We'll pick up your car, truck, RV, motorcycle, or boat for free, and you could get a tax break. The proceeds support the public radio shows you love, like Stateside, and you can do it all from the comfort of your home. Visit michiganradio.org/cars to learn more.